Welcome
Welcome
to
back to the
Whispers
deep
from the
dive.
Grove,
I
where
want
we
to
listen
start
for
today
what
by
time and the
trying a
forest have
little
always
experiment. It
known.
needs a bit of
Come sit
imagination,
with
so just
us.
stick with me here. I want you to pull up a mental image of the last time you went out into nature. Maybe it was a big trip, a national park, or maybe it was just the patch of woods behind your house. You got it.
Okay, yeah, I've got mine.
Now be honest. What was the mission? What were you actually doing there?
Okay.
Were you like checking your watch to see if you hit your step count? Were you looking around for that perfect golden hour light for a photo?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Or were you just trying to get from point A to point B to say you did the trail?
You're calling us out. You're basically asking if we were treating the outdoors like a to-do list.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
almost instinctual, isn't it? We treat nature as this backdrop for an activity. We go there to do something.
To perform it.
Right. We consume the scenery while we focus on our own performance. But today, we are working with a piece of source material that just completely challenges that instinct. It's a text called The Pulse of the Patient Woods.
And it is a fascinating read. It's this really unique blend of observation and philosophy. It's not a scientific study, though it definitely touches on biology.
No, not a survival guide either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's a contemplative deep dive into what happens physiologically and psychologically when you stop treating the forest like a gym or a studio and start treating it as a living system that you're actually a part of.
And the text calls this the transition from being a visitor to a participant. And frankly, the way it describes this shift, it's a little unnerving at first. It really challenges the way we operate.
It is unnerving
Yeah.
because it requires you to stop doing the one thing modern humans are just programmed to do.
Which is,
Perform.
that's the word that stuck with me from the opening. The author writes, it's like the forest notices you've stopped performing. That hit me hard. I mean, I don't think of myself as a performer when I'm just walking my dog in the park.
Well, let's unpack performing in like a sociological sense. It's not just about being on a stage. It's about projecting an identity. In the office, you perform competence. On social media, you perform happiness or success. But even on a trail, you're often performing fitness or adventure.
Yeah.
You're signaling to the world and to yourself, I am here, I am active, I am making good use of my time.
So you're maintaining a separate self that is observing the world.
Exactly. As long as you have an agenda, you're performing. If you are hiking to get to the summit, you're the subject, and the forest is the object. It's the scenery you pass through.
And the source suggests that the woods, well, they're just kind of waiting for you to drop the act. There is the specific shift described in the text where that boundary just dissolves. It says, you're not a visitor anymore. You're just there.
That's the crux of it. The moment you stop moving, and I mean really stop, not just pausing to tie your shoe or whatever, that distance collapses.
Right.
When you stop doing, you are forced to start being.
It reminds me of that feeling when the power goes out in your house. Suddenly the fridge stops humming, the heat turns off, and you realize, wow, silence is actually really loud.
That's a great analogy. But in this case, the refrigerator is your own internal monologue. It's the constant planning, analyzing, narrating your life. The source says you're not thinking about being, not analyzing it, just allowing yourself to exist alongside everything else that's existing.
Which, let's be real, is incredibly difficult. We are productivity junkies. Doing nothing feels almost rebellious, or at least wasteful. I feel guilty if I just sit on a bench for too long.
That guilt is exactly what the text gets at. But it counters that feeling with a really profound line. The trees don't ask for your purpose.
I loved that. It's the ultimate permission slip.
It really is. The text says the trees don't care about your LinkedIn profile, your deadlines, your anxieties. The forest is completely indifferent to all that.
To your social status.
Totally. The source actually lists the only 3 tasks that exist in the forest's curriculum. Do you remember what they were?
I do. Rooting, reaching, enduring.
Right. Rooting, reaching, enduring. That's it.
It's so simple, but compared to our daily lives, it feels radical. Enduring usually has a negative sound to it for us, like we're suffering through something. But here, it just means continuing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just means presence. And the argument here is that when you stop projecting your own frantic energy and just witness that quiet steadiness of the trees, something in your own headspace involuntarily opens up.
So it's not something you do.
No, it's something that happens to you because you finally stopped blocking it.
Let's get into the specifics of that because the source uses this great anecdote to illustrate the physical side of this.
Hmm.
We aren't just talking about a mental shift, we're talking about a biological one.
Hmm.
The narrator talks about sitting under an old beech tree.
Right, the beech tree section.
Yeah.
This is a key part of the text.
So the narrator sits there for an hour, no phone, no journal, just sitting. Now, I have to say, an hour is a long time.
It's a very long time for us.
If I sit still for 5 minutes, I start checking my pockets for my phone. I start thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner.
That's the withdrawal symptom of the dopamine loop. We're so used to constant input. But the narrator describes pushing past that boredom barrier. And what happens next is this sensory flooding. They describe the sound of the wind moving through the branches, saying it sounded like the whole canopy was breathing in and out together.
And this is where the text moves from poetry to physiology. It talks about synchronization.
Yes, this is a known phenomenon called entrainment. In physics and biology, entrainment is when independent rhythmic systems interact with each other and eventually they sync up. Think of like pendulum clocks on a wall. Eventually, they all start to swing together.
Okay, so how does that apply to a person in the woods?
Well, the text describes the narrator's breathing slowing down to match that rhythm of the canopy. The heartbeat feels less frantic. We often think of relaxation as an active task, right? Like, I need to do my breathing exercises now. But the source suggests that if you just place yourself in that environment and surrender to it, your biology naturally attunes to the slower rhythm.
So it's like being a metronome, ticking at 120 beats per minute. That's our modern caffeinated life. And you step into a room where everything else is ticking at 60. You can't help but sync up.
Precisely. You are an organism, just like the tree. If you stop fighting the environment, you harmonize with it. The source says it feels like the forest is reminding you. You don't have to rush. You don't have to prove anything.
And that phrase, you don't have to prove anything, that's the antidote to the performing we started with.
It is. When you realize the beech tree isn't judging your productivity, your nervous system gets the all-clear signal to stand down. It shifts from that sympathetic dominance, fight or flight, to parasympathetic, rest and digest.
But the source goes deeper than just relaxing. It starts to touch on something that feels, well, spiritual, though I want to be careful with that word because the text itself is very grounded.
The source is careful with it, too. It explicitly states this isn't about ghosts or supernatural entities. When the text uses the word spirit, it's really redefining it in a biological context.
Yeah, it talks about feeling a presence, like the place itself is aware. It says not judging, not speaking in words, but holding a kind of gentle knowing. It describes feeling seen, which honestly sounds a little trippy if you don't look at the context.
It sounds trippy until you look at the definition they give you. The source defines this spirit as the living intelligence of the whole system. It's not a single ghost in a machine, it's the connectivity.
Ah, okay.
The text points to very real biological mechanisms. The mycorrhizal networks, the roots talking to fungi underground.
The Wood Wide Web.
Exactly. The way chemical signals are passed between trees when a pest attacks. The way birds and insects move in patterns that rely on each other. That is a form of intelligence. It's a distributed system processing information.
It also mentions the slow alchemy of decay turning back into life, which is just such a beautiful way to describe the nutrient cycle.
But think about the implication of that. If you are sitting there observing all this, you're witnessing a system that is infinitely more complex than any spreadsheet you've ever worked on. Humans are pattern-seeking machines. When we sit still long enough to actually notice the fungi, the roots, the insect patterns, we intuitively sense this vast web of life all around us. We feel that intelligence.
And the reaction to that isn't fear. You'd think realizing you're surrounded by this massive, ancient intelligence would be scary. But the text describes it as a warmth in the chest or a sudden stillness in the mind.
It's the feeling of being in the presence of something competent. The ecosystem knows what it's doing. It survived ice ages and fires. It doesn't need you to manage it.
Which brings us to the voice the source gives this spirit. It imagines the forest saying, I've been here through storms you'll never know. I've sheltered countless lives. I'll keep standing long after you're gone.
And that right there is the concept of deep time.
Usually hearing, I'll be here long after you're gone, sounds terrifying. It sounds like a memento mori, remember you will die. But the source frames it as comforting. Why is that comforting?
It's comforting because it removes the burden of centrality. That's a heavy psychological weight we all carry. Let's call it main character syndrome. We feel like we're the protagonist and everything relies on us. Like we're holding up the sky. If we drop the ball, if we miss that deadline, the world ends.
Right. If I don't answer that email by 5 p.m., disaster strikes.
Precisely. But the forest says, no, I've weathered storms you can't even imagine. I'm holding up the sky. You are just a visitor here.
The text uses that web metaphor here. It says, when you sit long enough, you start to feel woven into that web. Your own being isn't separate. It's a small thread in something vast and patient.
And being a small thread is incredibly liberating. In our daily lives, we have to be the whole tapestry. In the woods, you realize the ecosystem functions perfectly well without your input. That humility is what provides the comfort. You are small, so your problems are small.
It puts everything in perspective. My concern about my credit score or my social media likes feels pretty silly when I'm looking at a tree that's stood in that spot for 200 years.
Exactly. The scale of the forest absorbs the scale of your anxiety.
So we have this shift in perspective. We have the physiological syncing. But here's the catch. We can't live under the beech tree. Eventually, my leg goes to sleep, or it gets dark, or I get hungry. We have to go back to the car, check the phone, and return to the world of performing. So what is the point? Is this just a temporary escape?
The source argues it's much more than an escape. If it were just an escape, it would be like watching a movie nice while it lasts, but then it's over. The text frames the forest as an antidote to modernity.
It contrasts the world's message with the forest's message. The world says, be more, do more, achieve more.
And the forest invites us to be less.
Be less. That goes against everything I've been told since kindergarten. We always want to be more, better, faster, stronger. What exactly does the source mean by be less?
It breaks it down into 3 specific qualities. Less separate, less hurried, and less alone.
Okay, less hurried makes sense. We talked about the slow rhythm. Less separate connects to the web idea. But less alone is interesting because technically you went into the woods to be by yourself.
Are you by yourself?
Well, no other humans.
Right, no other humans.
Yeah.
But if you accept that living intelligence concept, the roots, the birds, the breathing canopy, you are surrounded by life. You are only alone if you think humans are the only things that matter.
That's a good point. If you see the tree as a participant, you're in a crowd.
You're in a crowd. So the goal isn't just to have a nice afternoon, it's to retrieve something. The source talks about returning to these places to remember what being feels like without all the noise we usually carry. It calls it a quiet reminder.
So the souvenir isn't a pine cone or a photo.
No, it's a state of mind. The text says, and when you leave, you carry a little of that spirit with you. It's a reminder that you don't have to be anything other than what you are right here.
That is a powerful affirmation. You don't have to be anything other than what you are. It circles right back to the performance. You can drop the act, even if just for a few minutes.
And the implication is that if you can access that feeling of being enough under a tree, you can potentially hold on to it when you're back in traffic or in a meeting. You can carry that quiet steadiness with you like an emotional anchor. You can remember, I am a thread in the web. And suddenly the traffic jam isn't a personal attack on your time. It's just enduring.
That makes this deep dive into the woods a very practical tool for mental health, not just a hobby.
Absolutely. It's a reset button for the nervous system.
The source ends on a really contemplative note that I want to unpack before we finish. There's this description of the ambient sounds wind through leaves, faint birds, and the narrator thinks, maybe the forest is always whispering that. We just need to slow down enough to hear it.
I love that line. It suggests that this spirit, this reminder of sufficiency, isn't something that turns on and off. The signal is always broadcasting. We are just usually too jammed with our own signal interference to receive it.
It changes the way you look at the woods. It's not a silent place. It's a place that's speaking a language we've forgotten how to hear.
Or maybe a language we're too busy shouting over.
So let's summarize this journey we've taken today. It's been a bit different than our usual topics. We started with the anxiety of doing hiking, photographing, performing for an audience that isn't even there.
Then we stop. We sit. We let that boundary dissolve. Our breathing slows down to match the canopy via entrainment. We stop fighting the rhythm of the world around us.
You recognize the living intelligence of the system, the roots, the decay, the endurance, and we realize we are just a small thread in a vast web, which makes our mortgage and our emails feel appropriately smaller.
And finally, we accept the invitation to be less. We take that feeling of being less separate and less alone, and we try to carry that quiet confidence back into the noise of the real world.
It really makes me want to go find a tree and just sit there. No podcast gear, no notes, just me and the moss. I think I've been missing the doing nothing part of my outdoor trips.
I think we could all use a bit more of that rooting and enduring energy. It's easier said than done, but the source makes a really compelling case that it's necessary.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave the listener with something to chew on. We've talked a lot about this voice of the forest, the way it whispers that we are enough.
Yes, and this raises a question that the source hints at, but it leaves it open.
The text suggests the forest is always whispering, but if we take a step back, is that voice actually coming from the trees? Or is the forest simply the only place in our modern lives that is quiet enough for us to hear our own existence?
That is the big question.
Mhm.
Is the spirit out there in the leaves acting as an external comfort? Or is it the sound of your own mind finally ceasing to struggle? Are you finally hearing yourself?
I'm not sure which answer is more comforting.
I think the beauty is that it doesn't really matter. The result is the same. Connection.
Well, on that note, we are going to sign off. We encourage you, yes, you listening right now, to find your own beech tree moment this week. Go to the woods, do nothing, see what happens. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Take care.